The sun had barely cracked over the horizon when Marcus Webb unlocked the door to his small woodworking shop on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. The smell of fresh-cut pine and varnish greeted him like an old friend. He ran his calloused hand along the workbench, feeling the worn grooves where thousands of window frames had been measured, cut, and assembled over the past 15 years. Marcus wasn't like the other craftsmen in town. While everyone else had moved to sleek, modern designs with narrow frames and minimalist profiles, he stuck to his grandfather's technique. Wide frames, thick joints, extra reinforcement at every corner. The kind of windows that looked almost old-fashioned in a world obsessed with floor-to-ceiling glass and barely their borders. His phone buzzed. Another message in the contractor's group chat. Marcus hesitated before opening it, already knowing what he'd find. Sure enough, there was a photo of one of his window installations from last month, posted by Derek Chambers, the most successful contractor in the Portland metro area. The caption read, "Look at these chunky relics. Webb still living in 1985 while the rest of us moved on." The laughing emojis that followed felt like tiny daggers. Marcus set his phone down and took a deep breath. This wasn't the first time. At the Quarterly Builders Expo 3 weeks ago, Derek had walked past his booth without even a glance, loudly telling his crew that modern clients wanted sight lines, not lumber lines. Other contractors had snickered. A few younger builders had actually stopped to photograph his display windows, not out of interest but to share jokes later. The worst part was watching potential clients walk away. Just last Tuesday, the Hendersons had visited his shop, drawn by his reputation for quality. They'd loved his work ethic, his attention to detail, his fair prices. Then Mrs. Henderson had touched one of the frames and frowned. "These are quite thick, aren't they? My designer showed me pictures of windows that are almost invisible." Before Marcus could explain the structural benefits, they were gone, promising to think about it. He never heard back. Marcus walked to the back of his shop where a half-finished custom order sat waiting. The Morales family had commissioned a set of bay windows for their renovated craftsman home in the Hawthorne district. They were one of the few clients who actually appreciated traditional construction. He picked up his measuring tape and got to work, letting the familiar rhythm of his craft push away the sting of humiliation. By noon, the shop bell chimed. Marcus looked up to see Tom Brennan, an old friend from trade school who now ran a successful hardware supply company. Tom's expression was serious as he closed the door behind him. "Marcus, we need to talk." Tom pulled up a stool. "I just came from a meeting with Derek Chambers. He's launching a new development, 30 homes in the Bethany area. Huge contract. He specifically said he doesn't want any suppliers who work with you involved. He's basically blacklisting you." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Why would he do that?" Tom shook his head. "He says you're making the industry look backward, that your designs are hurting property values and making builders look out of touch. He's got influence, Marcus. Half the contractors in the city listened to him." The words hung heavy in the air. Marcus had known his style was unpopular, but he hadn't realized it had become a liability. He thought about his small crew, just 2 part-time helpers who depended on the steady work. He thought about his daughter Sophie's college tuition, due in 3 months. He thought about the mortgage on the shop that he'd refinanced twice already. "What am I supposed to do, Tom? Abandon everything my grandfather taught me? Start churning out frames so thin they'll rattle in the first windstorm?" Tom stood up, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I'm not saying that. I'm just warning you. Things are getting harder. Derek's convinced everyone that thin is in, and thick is ancient history. You might want to consider adapting at least a little." After Tom left, Marcus stood alone in his shop, surrounded by the tools and techniques passed down through 3 generations. Outside, the Oregon sky had turned gray, promising the kind of persistent rain that defined autumn in the Pacific Northwest. The same rain that would test every window in every home across the city. The same rain that Marcus had built his entire philosophy around withstanding. He looked at his grandfather's portrait on the wall, the old man standing proudly beside a Victorian home he'd restored in 1972. Every window in that house still stood today, untouched by time or weather. Marcus picked up his tools and returned to work. The ridicule intensified over the following weeks like a slow-building storm. Marcus started noticing it everywhere. At the lumber yard, younger contractors would whisper and point when he walked past the display sections. The clerk who'd always been friendly suddenly became curt, rushing through his orders as if embarrassed to be seen helping him. The breaking point came on a cold October morning at the Portland Builders Association meeting. Marcus had been a member for 12 years, rarely missing a monthly gathering. He walked into the convention hall at the Hilton downtown, grabbed his coffee, and headed toward his usual seat near the middle. Derek Chambers was already there, holding court with at least 15 contractors circled around him. His voice carried across the room. And get this, he was trying to convince the Riverside project to use his frames. I told them, you want your luxury condos to look like a retirement home? Go ahead, hire Webb. They laughed so hard the developer nearly spit out his drink. The group erupted in laughter. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His face burned hot. He stood frozen, coffee cup trembling slightly in his hand. Hey Marcus, Derek called out, not bothering to lower his voice. We were just discussing modern construction standards. You know, concepts from this century. Maybe you could learn something. More laughter. Marcus wanted to respond, to defend himself, to explain that his frames were engineered for longevity, not just aesthetics. But the words caught in his throat. He simply turned and walked toward an empty seat in the back corner, feeling like a kid being exiled to the cafeteria's lonely table. The presentation that morning was about emerging trends in residential construction. The speaker, a hotshot architect from Seattle, spent 40 minutes praising minimalist design, ultra-thin profiles, and maximum glass exposure. He showed slide after slide of stunning homes with windows that seemed to disappear into walls. This is what today's buyers want, the architect declared. Seamless transitions between indoor and outdoor spaces. Frames that don't interrupt sightlines. Weight specifications that allow for larger panes without structural compromise. Marcus slumped in his chair. Every word felt like another nail in the coffin of his career. After the meeting, he walked to his truck alone. No one approached him. No one said goodbye. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel, fighting back the frustration and shame building in his chest. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter Sophie. Dad, did you transfer the tuition payment? The deadline is Friday. Marcus closed his eyes. The Morales project would cover it, barely. But after that, the calendar on his phone showed only 2 small jobs scheduled for November. Nothing for December. He drove back to his shop through streets slicked with fresh rain, watching water stream down car windows and storefront glass. Somewhere in this city, he thought narrow frames were already beginning to fail. He just had to wait for everyone else to notice. 3 days later, Marcus was installing the Morales Bay windows when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Webb, this is Catherine Park. I'm a structural engineer with the city building department. We've received multiple reports of window failures across Portland. Water damage, frame warping, seal breakage. All from installations done in the last 6 months. All using narrow-profile frames. Marcus straightened up, his heart suddenly racing. How many reports? 47 so far. And counting. The recent rain has been relentless, and these frames weren't built to handle sustained moisture exposure. We're seeing swelling, separation at the joints, even complete frame collapse in some cases. Mr. Webb, I pulled the permit records. Your installations show 0 failures. Not one complaint. Marcus walked to the window he just secured, running his hand along the wide frame, feeling the solid construction beneath his fingertips. What do you need from me? We're conducting emergency inspections. I need someone who understands traditional frame construction to consult. Someone who built their windows correctly. The engineers here are scrambling because most new construction followed the same faulty trend. Can you come to the municipal building tomorrow morning at 8? I'll be there. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about all those failed windows, all those homeowners dealing with water damage, ruined walls, and furniture destroyed by rain that seeped through gaps in frames too thin to maintain their integrity. He thought about Derek Chambers and his massive Bethany development. 30 homes, hundreds of windows, all built to the same narrow specifications that were now failing across the city. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the municipal building to find Catherine Park waiting with 3 other city engineers and 2 building inspectors. She spread blueprints and failure reports across the conference table. Every single one showed the same pattern. Frames less than 2 inches thick, minimal corner reinforcement, joints that couldn't withstand moisture expansion. If you're watching this story and you're rooting for Marcus right now, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, what happens next will restore your faith in staying true to your craft, even when everyone says you're wrong. Catherine looked at Marcus with respect he hadn't seen from anyone in months. Mr. Webb, we need you to inspect the high-risk properties and provide recommendations. We also need you to submit a technical report explaining why your construction method prevents these failures. This is going to be a major story. The media is already calling it the thin frame crisis. Marcus nodded slowly, processing the magnitude of what was happening. How many contractors used these narrow frames? Catherine's expression was grim. Nearly all of them, Mr. Webb, including Derek Chambers. The story hit the Portland Tribune the next morning with a headline that sent shockwaves through the construction industry. Hundreds of new homes face window failures after record rainfall. Marcus's phone started ringing before 7 in the morning and didn't stop. The first call was from Mrs. Henderson, the woman who'd walked away from his shop weeks ago. Mr. Webb, I don't know if you remember us, but we chose another contractor for our windows. They're failing. Water is pouring into our living room. Can you help us? Marcus scheduled an inspection for that afternoon. Then came another call, and another. By noon, he had 17 appointments booked. Homeowners were desperate, many facing thousands of dollars in water damage on top of the cost of replacing faulty windows. Catherine Park's report went public that same week. It was damning. She traced the trend back to a design philosophy that prioritized aesthetics over engineering, profit margins over performance. The report specifically praised Marcus's traditional construction method, calling it the gold standard for moisture resistance and structural integrity in Pacific Northwest climate conditions. The Builders Association called an emergency meeting. This time, when Marcus walked into the room, the atmosphere was completely different. Contractors who'd mocked him weeks ago now approached with sheepish expressions and business cards. The association president asked Marcus to present his construction techniques to the entire membership. Derek Chambers sat in the front row, his face pale and drawn. His Bethany development had become the poster child for the crisis. 28 of the 30 homes were reporting window failures. Buyers were threatening lawsuits. His company's insurance premiums had tripled overnight. When Marcus took the podium, he didn't gloat. He didn't mock. He simply explained what his grandfather had taught him. Wide frames distribute stress. Proper joinery prevents moisture infiltration. Quality construction costs more upfront but saves fortunes over time. The room listened in absolute silence. After the presentation, Derek approached him in the parking lot. Marcus braced himself for confrontation, but Derek's voice was quiet, almost broken. I was wrong about you. I let trends and profit margins blind me to basic engineering. My reputation is destroyed, and I deserve it. But those homeowners don't deserve what I built for them. Would you consider consulting on the repairs? I'll pay whatever you ask. Marcus studied the man who'd made his life miserable for months. Derek looked genuinely devastated, humbled by the consequences of his own arrogance. Marcus thought about his grandfather, who'd always said that good craftsmanship wasn't about being right, it was about building things that lasted. I'll help with the repairs. But Derek, you're going to learn how to do this correctly. No shortcuts, no cost-cutting. You're going to rebuild those windows the right way. Derek nodded, relief flooding his features. Thank you. The next 3 months transformed Marcus's life in ways he never imagined. His small shop went from 2 part-time helpers to a full crew of 8 craftsmen, all eager to learn traditional window construction. The waiting list for his services stretched into the following summer. The city of Portland issued new building codes specifically referencing frame width requirements and moisture resistance standards. Catherine Park worked directly with Marcus to develop the technical specifications. His grandfather's techniques, once ridiculed as outdated, became the official blueprint for quality construction in the Pacific Northwest. Major home improvement retailers started carrying what they now marketed as web-style frames. Marcus received calls from architectural firms in Seattle, Eugene, and even as far as San Francisco, all wanting to incorporate his designs into their projects. A building materials manufacturer offered him a consulting contract worth more than he'd earned in the previous 5 years combined. But the moment that meant the most came on a gray December afternoon. Marcus was working late in his shop when Derek Chambers arrived, not in his usual luxury pickup, but in a modest work van. He carried a toolbox and wore actual work clothes, paint-stained and worn. "I finished the certification program," Derek said, setting down his toolbox. 6 weeks of training in traditional joinery and frame construction. "I wanted you to see this before I install it." He pulled out a window frame he'd built himself. Wide profile, reinforced corners, perfect moisture seals. Marcus examined the work carefully, checking every joint, every measurement. It was solid, well-crafted, built to last. "This is good work, Derek. Really good." Derek's shoulders relaxed. "I've been rebuilding my entire business from the ground up. Smaller projects, quality over quantity. The slower and the profit margins are thinner, but I can actually sleep at night now." He paused, meeting Marcus's eyes. "I called all 15 contractors who I'd influenced to blacklist you. Told them I was wrong. Told them you were the one who had it right all along." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. The anger and humiliation he'd carried for months began to dissolve. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Derek extended his hand. "I destroyed your reputation because of my own arrogance. The least I can do is help rebuild it, though honestly, you're doing fine without my help." They shook hands, and Marcus saw genuine remorse in Derek's expression. Some of the other contractors who joined in the mockery had sent awkward apology emails. A few had even hired Marcus for their own projects, swallowing their pride to access his expertise. The Hendersons sent a thank you card with a photo of their newly installed windows, wide-framed and sturdy, with a note that read, "Our home is finally protected. Thank you for not giving up on quality." Marcus pinned it to the wall next to his grandfather's portrait. 3 generations of craftsmanship, vindicated by rain and time. 2 years later, Marcus stood in front of a newly constructed building in downtown Portland. The sign above the entrance read Webb Traditional Craftsmanship Institute. What had started as a small woodworking shop had evolved into something far bigger than he'd ever dreamed. Inside, 20 students worked at benches, learning the techniques his grandfather had passed down. Some were young contractors looking to differentiate themselves in a crowded market. Others were established builders like Derek Chambers, who now taught an advanced course on structural integrity every Thursday evening. Sophie, his daughter, had graduated college debt-free and now managed the business side of the operation. She walked over with a tablet, showing him the latest enrollment numbers. "Dad, we have a waiting list of 63 people for next semester. And look at this." She swiped to an email. "A university in Vancouver wants to partner with us to develop a certification program." Marcus shook his head in amazement. "All because I was too stubborn to change." Sophie smiled. "No, Dad, because you knew the difference between trends and truth." She gestured around the workshop. "You didn't just build better windows. You taught people that quality matters more than popularity." The annual Portland Builders Association Gala was that evening. This time, Marcus arrived as the keynote speaker and recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award. As he walked to the podium, he passed Derek Chambers, who gave him an encouraging nod. The room was filled with contractors, architects, and city officials, all there to honor the man they'd once mocked. Marcus looked out at the audience and thought about that terrible morning when Derek had humiliated him in front of everyone. He thought about the lonely drives home, the financial stress, the doubt that had crept in during the darkest moments. "My grandfather used to say that storms don't destroy good foundations, they expose weak ones." Marcus paused, letting the words settle. The rain that fall didn't create the problem. It just revealed what was already there. Frames built without integrity. Shortcuts disguised as innovation. Profit prioritized over performance. The room was silent, hanging on every word. We all face moments when staying true to our principles feels like the hardest choice. When everyone around us says we're wrong, outdated, irrelevant. But here's what I learned. The rain always comes. And when it does, what you built with care will stand, while everything else falls apart. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, dozens of people approached to share their own stories of standing firm against trends, of choosing quality over convenience, of trusting their instincts when everyone else said they were wrong. Marcus drove home that night past houses throughout Portland, their windows glowing warmly against the darkness. Wide frames, solid construction, built to last. The rain had stopped, but its lessons remained.